Okay, so welcome to Northern California, where it is currently very smoky out due to all the wildfires. I thought I would take today to show you this new photography technique that I've recently been really liking and seeing around that I think takes your photos to the next level of professionalism that isn't available in very many other techniques. It's super easy to do, and I think it looks really good and unique. So let me show you what it is. So basically the photographic technique is just to add motion blur into your shots. And what I mean by this is that when you have your subject, usually a person in your shot, what you're gonna do is just lower down your shutter speed to like 1/15 of a second, or maybe even a little lower, just to blur out that subject. So the background is nice and crisp and in focus, but the subject is a little bit blurred out, adding some motion, adding some creativity and just uniqueness to your photos. Now I got this motion blur photo effect partly by looking at National Geographic photos and also Patagonia photos. They just sometimes add this technique to their photos, but I was also looking at some video clips that I shot, and I just stopped the frame and I saw how nice that little bit of blur in the shot, just that single frame grab look, especially since I realized that when you're shooting video, usually at 24 frames per second, you just double that shutter speed at 1/50th of a second. So you do get that natural motion blur that looks like it might look with the human eye, which is really what you're going for with video. And I realized it's a bit weird in photos that we crank up our shutter speed way high, we stop the motion in frozen time, which isn't really realistic to the eye, and so sometimes it can look a bit unnatural. So I think adding that motion blur back to the photos really makes it stand out and look more realistic. So I think there are three main reasons why you would use this motion blur photo technique. The first one is that it just adds more motion to your photos. It makes them more exciting, more interesting to look at, and it gives the viewer something to imply that there's motion going on in that shot that you took. The second reason why you might want to use this motion blur technique is just to blur out your subject. Sometimes when you're shooting photos in public places, you don't want to show the person's details up closely, just for privacy reasons, of course. And so it's nice to just be able to blur out your subject. You can still show that there's someone there, but it's not really obvious who they are, so it just removes a lot of those concerns with privacy issues. And then the third reason for taking these motion blur photos is that it just looks unique. It looks different. It stands out apart from the other photos. They're always super sharp, and having that little bit of blur might catch someone's eye and intrigue them more than just a standard photo that they see every day. And like I said, doing this is super simple. Literally all you have to do is just lower your shutter speed to a shutter that adds some blur into your shot. So where you might be normally shooting at 1/500th of a second, you can lower it down to like 1/50th of a second, which is what video usually has. Get a tiny bit of motion blur, but you can bring it all the way down to like 1/20th, 1/15th, or even 1/10th. Of course, the slower you make the shutter speed, the more probability there's going to be other blur in the shot, in the background, that it won't be quite as sharp. So at some point with that shutter speed, you're definitely going to want a tripod. I would probably say below 1/10th of a second, but at the same time, the wider you're shooting on your lens, so if you have like a 24mm, you're going to be able to get away with a lower shutter speed rather than a more zoomed in lens like 70mm. You're going to have to raise that shutter speed so you don't have that motion of the camera end up in the final shot. But it's honestly just about trying different shutter speeds, trying different focal lengths in different types of shots, and just seeing how that motion blur comes out and how you think you like it the best. But with that said, let me head out and try and take some cool motion blur photos. They're probably all going to be in black and white because it is smoky, like I said, and I'm going to try and make it look a bit more like fog and less like smoke. But let's just get out there and be creative with it. Anyway, that's basically it. As you can see, it is a super simple concept, and I think it looks really cool, but it also goes without saying that it's not usable in every single situation and you shouldn't overdo it. But here and there, it's definitely a unique touch on photography, and it adds some motion and interest in your shots that might not be there otherwise. So thank you as always for watching, and I will see you all next time.